Hello and good afternoon everyone. My name is Barry Smart. I work for Engine. We're a fully remote boutique technology consultancy based here in the UK with a global customer base. We specialise in helping small teams to deliver impactful cloud-native apps and data and analytics solutions. I'm going to talk to you today about some of the ingredients required to create a high-performance data team based on my nearly 30 years of experience in the technology sector. I started out as a software engineer in the energy sector. I evolved into an architect, then I did a stint as a business transformation manager. I was promoted to IT director before switching sector to help digitally transform a 100-year-old financial services firm and was promoted to CTO as a result. I then decided to change gears and follow my passion. I studied for a master's in AI and data science, and now I'm Director of Data and AI at Engine. So I've been a team member, a team lead, I've led a department, I've been an organizational leader, and now I help to mentor customers to create high-performance data teams which transform their organizations. And I'm going to share my insights with you. First, I wanted to talk about data as a socio-technical endeavour. In other words, you have to master the cultural, organisational and human aspects, as well as the technology, in order to succeed. This simple model fits any data project. The data team on the left create a data product to meet the needs of the users on the right. Value flows from left to right. Also important are the feedback loops that enable the data team to evolve the data product in response to the evolving needs of the users. There's often a lot of uncertainty in these types of projects, especially if you're doing cutting-edge, innovative, transformational work where things are under constant evolution. But wherever the flow of value or the feedback loops break down, significant issues will occur. A major consideration in any socio-technical system is Conway's law. This powerful so-called homomorphic force means that organizational lines of communication will prevail over the software architecture that you're trying to deliver. Now, Conway's law can be leveraged for good, but if it's ignored, it can also have significant negative implications for data teams and the projects that they're trying to deliver. Let me try and bring that to life with a story. I learned about Conway's law the hard way when I was involved in a project to deliver a new digital proposition direct to consumers. We had a strong vision for the architecture. We wanted to adopt cloud platform as a service, put in place a series of data processes to wrap up the core intellectual property, and then enable end users to interact with it through a web app. We'd considered and thought about the architecture, but what we'd failed to think about was how the organisation was set up to deliver it. When I overlay the many teams and stakeholders involved, you can see how it immediately gets more complicated. For example, we had an independent test team. This meant time-consuming conversations to hand over the software so it could be tested, and then more time-consuming conversations for the test team to communicate the issues that they had found so that they could then be resolved. Another example was the deployment team, who became a bottleneck for getting new releases into production. Releases were a major ceremony and were fraught with problems, and as a result, we were only able to release every quarter rather than our objective of releasing every week. And that's just two examples of where organizational design was working against the target software architecture and the flow of value. As a result, we ended up with a suboptimal architecture, and the product owner spent a great deal of time facing internally, trying to overcome inefficiencies, barriers, blockers to get functionality into the hands of the end users. One consequence of this was that we lost sight of the end users, and the feedback loops that we know were so important never really existed. In retrospect, I believe that we could have achieved twice as much, 10 times faster with half the people. And indeed, after a few years having spent a significant amount of money on the project, but only having onboarded a small number of customers, the organisation made the tough decision to retire the product. The moral of this story is ignore the negative effects of Conway's law at your peril. High-performance data teams are highly aware that they are operating within a socio-technical system. I wanted to speak briefly about 4 of the traits that enable them to wield these socio-technical forces for good. The first trait is that high-performance data teams tend to be small and multidisciplinary in nature. The magic number is somewhere between 7 and 9. You may have heard Facebook's 2-pizza team principle, which is about a team size no bigger than you could feed with 2 pizzas. And that principle is backed up by academic research, most famously by anthropologist Robin Dunbar. A small team enables a flat structure and for the team to be self-organizing. They are also empowered to get things done and adopt agile practices. By multidisciplinary, we mean that they have all of the skills necessary to discover, build, and own data products through their end-to-end life cycle. So what are those skills? Much of the advice on the web about building data teams will list the roles on this slide. There's no doubt that you may need some of these skills, but the fundamental problem I have is it suggests you should be filling your team with narrow specialists. And thinking about Conway's law, you're at immediate risk of creating silos within the team and triggering the negative aspects of Conway's law. With a small team, you can't afford to have people that are narrow specialists. You need much broader skills, and for the skills across the team to overlap. You want people to wear multiple hats, people who are motivated by the team's success and who are interested in the business domain that you're operating in. Overall, they need to be inquisitive and willing to constantly learn. We like to say, hire for attitude over aptitude. So how do organizations build high-performance data teams from scratch? Well, to illustrate this, I wanted to tell another story about a medium-sized organization we've been working with for just over 2 years. The organization had a goal to become more data-driven, so they hired a team lead. Her official title is Head of Data and Analytics, but we prefer to think of her as Chief Data Evangelist because that's exactly what she does. She's great at leading and inspiring her team, but she's also highly capable at engaging outwards into the wider organization, influencing right up to executive level. On day 1, she inherited a DBA who had been working in isolation to maintain a legacy data warehouse solution that the firm had built a few years ago. Now, this warehouse had served the organization well, but it was struggling to scale and to adapt, so it was clear it needed to be replaced with a new platform. And this is where we came in. We engaged with the team intensively for the first 3 months of its life by augmenting it with a squad from Engine and working alongside them to implement a new cloud-native data and analytics platform and to deliver the first few products on that platform, helping the team to upskill and learn the new technology along the way. Now, during the course of delivering that first data product, our chief data evangelist worked with a domain expert within one of the departments within the organization who showed a high degree of data literacy, and she became team member number 3, bringing all that fantastic domain knowledge as well as a great deal of enthusiasm to pick up new skills that would allow her to pivot into a data career. For team member 4, she tapped into the organization's graduate recruitment program, bringing in a maths graduate into the team. And finally, about a year into forming the team, for team member 5, she identified that they needed to increase their overall engineering maturity. So she went out to the market and hired an experienced software engineer who wanted to pivot into data. So 2 years on, they've gone through the forming, norming, storming cycle and are now a high-performance data team. And they're well on the way to helping the organization to achieve its goal of becoming more data-driven, with numerous high-value data products in use across the organization. And I think this example shows you don't need to go out there and hire a bunch of specialists. With a vision and a bit of patience, you can grow your own talent. The second trait of a high-performance data team is that they adopt a product mindset. In doing so, they will discover, build and own data products through their entire end-to-end life cycle. To succeed with a product mindset, these teams need to be outward-looking. In other words, they're not an order taker sitting there waiting to get work allocated to them. They're out there actively engaging with the business, looking for opportunities to digitally transform the organization using data. They're also aware of the need to balance the total cost of ownership against the value that's going to be delivered, and they're prepared to pivot or even fail fast in the discovery phase if that balance is tipping in the wrong direction. We hear that over 70% of digital transformations fail, so it's better to fail early when the costs that have been sunk are low. Useful learning can be extracted and they can move on to the next idea. They are therefore operating as an innovation engine, helping the organization to cycle through ideas rapidly to discover the data products that will have a genuine transformational impact. You will notice that I've used the term data product throughout this presentation. This is to reinforce product thinking. Data product as a concept is also one of the 4 principles of the data mesh architecture. It's gaining a lot of attention in the data industry at the moment. The third trait is engineering maturity. High-performance data teams embrace the principles, processes and tools that mainstream engineering teams use. This is to achieve a single objective, the rapid and safe delivery of value. By rapid, we mean taking humans out of the loop wherever possible through automation and adopting tools that boost productivity. By safe, we mean removing risk and reducing costs. The team are aiming to build, test and release new features in a repeatable, reliable, autonomous manner with a high degree of confidence and with little or no ceremony. For example, by considering non-functional requirements up front, it allows you to build a better data product by considering things like master data management and programmatic governance. You can build these into your solution from the outset, rather than trying to bolt them on later in the life cycle when it's more expensive and risky to do so. The data technology landscape has matured significantly in the last 5 years. Cloud-native platforms such as Azure Synapse Analytics now provide all of the capabilities you need to adopt good engineering practice. The final trait I wanted to talk about is how high-performance data teams help the wider organization to become ready to adopt data products. Data teams don't exist in isolation. They need to interact with and influence other parts of the organization to succeed. Firstly, they need to establish productive partnerships with technology peers in a way where those interactions don't inhibit the flow of value. And this is typically achieved by encouraging these other teams to interact either as an enabling team, where they bring in specialist expertise over short periods of time to help the data team unblock some kind of impediment, or interacting as a platform team by providing well-documented tools, platforms and services that the data team can consume in a simple way, for example through an API or a command line script. Note that in many organizations, these technology peers may well be external parties. Secondly, interaction with the users of their data products is critical in order to create the feedback loops that I talked about earlier, to build empathy and to understand the evolving needs of those users. Key to this is being able to establish a common language. For example, one organization we worked with had 20 different definitions of gross margin. And until we'd helped the data team to resolve this, it was very difficult for them to move on and develop the data product. Another common issue we have with users is misaligned incentives that act as a barrier to adoption. To quote Upton Sinclair, it's difficult to get a person to understand something when their salary depends upon them not understanding it. And this is where the relationship between the data team and the leadership of the organization becomes important, in order to make the necessary operating model changes that are required to remove these types of barriers. High-performance data teams are also able to influence upwards, challenging the status quo, encouraging leadership to embrace data opportunities, helping them to understand how they can achieve their goals by integrating data into the wider strategy of the organization. So in summary, data is a socio-technical affair. Have you mapped out how value flows within your team? Are there opportunities to optimize it? Do you have feedback loops in place? And if so, what are they telling you? Are you wielding Conway's law and the homomorphic force that I talked about earlier for good? Think about applying some of the traits I described today. Small, multidisciplinary teams that are self-organizing, adopt agile practices, and have all of the skills needed to build and own data products. Adopting a product mindset, acting as an innovation engine, looking outwards into the organization to understand user needs and discover high-value data products, and being prepared to fail fast when the ideas are not going to achieve a high value relative to their TCO. Engineering maturity. What practices and tools can you adopt from mainstream software engineering to achieve rapid and safe delivery of value? And finally, are you helping the wider organization to become data-driven, influencing through your relationships with technology peers, end users, and the leadership of the organization? I'm aware that I've covered a lot of ground in the last 20 minutes. For a deeper insight, I'd recommend a visit to our website where we have a range of blogs covering all of the topics I've talked about today. And you can reach the blogs using the QR code that's on the screen at the moment. So that completes the talk. Thanks very much for coming along and for listening, and I'd love to get your feedback. Thanks again. Bye-bye.